Hi, my name is Jason Young, and I'm currently running a health coaching company with my brother. And this is just for people out there with their own businesses, and it's a great way to think about marketing and putting systems in place to make yourself more productive. So, without any delay, the scientific method. You might be thinking, what? Like the scientific method? But one thing I realize is we're conducting research on why we think people are going to buy our things, like our landing page, our funnel, and making tweaks to the funnel. If you don't know about funnels, it's kind of like an automated sales process, and Russell Brunson talks about it a lot. But once we have the funnel up and running, we're then tweaking it to make sure we get the sales and looking at conversions between different things. And we're constantly forming hypotheses, but we'll spend a bunch of money on ads. We'll see how those ads convert, where we're losing people. And one of the systems that we're implementing is the scientific method of just before we make any tweaks or changes on the website or anything, we have to write down what our hypothesis is. Like, why do we think this is going to work? Like, what do we think the buyer's mind is going to be like? Like, we have to form a hypothesis, and I'll move this over quickly. Because if you don't form a hypothesis, all you're doing is kind of like just messing around. Give me a second. On mouse. There we go. Okay. If you don't form a hypothesis, then all you do is kind of messing around and you're throwing money into the trash because you don't know necessarily why your product works. Like you might stumble across something and it takes off and you're like, oh yay, but you can't really replicate that. And that's the whole key here is you have to try to understand the buyer's mind. And our goal is to put together a system and a document showing we do this because of this, and kind of like a hypothesis is that this is going to happen if we change it. We conduct the hypothesis, we do the experiment, we look at the data, and then we form a conclusion off of it. And then I don't know why it's a question there, but we just form a new hypothesis based off of the data given to us, and we tweak it again. And this way, we're doing market research. We're not just throwing our money down the drain because sometimes an ad works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you look at it through this lens of you're testing your hypothesis, you're forming new ones. Once you get a working hypothesis and an understanding of why something's working, and you test it and it works out, then you can apply that, and it's going to be so valuable to you versus not necessarily knowing why your website worked. Because you might get a fluke, you might get 100K in sales, you might have something work really well. But if you don't know what in that specifically is why it's working, it's besides the initial sales, it's useless to you because you're not going to ever be able to recreate it. You might copy the website over, but you might not hit that one little thing that you didn't even realize you're doing that caused the success in the first place. So, just a quick little video talking about the importance of forming hypothesis, testing them, and then looking at the data and collecting it. And this isn't necessarily only for business, but also for health. When I try a new diet, I form a hypothesis. I'm like, I think supplementing magnesium is going to help me with muscle cramps. That's my hypothesis. I start supplementing magnesium. I look at the data. How many muscle cramps am I having? How am I feeling? And I form my conclusion based off of that. And it might have been completely wrong, but you then form a new hypothesis. So, like, give me a second. Here's an example. You form a hypothesis. Nicotine is good for studying or good for stress relieving. You test it out. You go smoke a cigarette when you get stressed out. You look at the data. Your stress goes down while you're smoking. You form a conclusion. Well, nicotine must be good for my stress. The one thing you missed there is the fact that I could give you a counter hypothesis. Focusing on my breathing and being mindful is good for my stress. When you're smoking, what are you doing? You're focusing on your breathing. You're bringing your awareness inside your body. You're feeling how you feel. the experiment would be the smoke would be doing breath exercises and calming down. The data is the same, but the conclusion is slightly different. So you have to sometimes form a way to isolate it. If your hypothesis is that this works, then you have to write down what are the variables, like what makes up that thing. So for smoking, it would be the nicotine, but also the breath work, and then also going outside to do it. So you have to test each of those individually because you might form a wrong hypothesis. You might be like, well, it must be the nicotine, while ignoring the fact that when you smoke, you go outside and you breathe in fresh air occasionally between breaths of cigarettes. Or you might look at the fact that you're focusing on your breathing. So there are things to watch out for here, but definitely worth giving a shot.